Hey there. Welcome to the very first episode of Keystone Habits. I'm Jonathan Ball, a certified coach in Affective Liminal Psychology, and I help people rewire their habits to create meaningful, lasting change. This show is all about how the smallest things that we do, often without thinking, end up shaping our days, our years, and ultimately our entire lives. This isn't just a productivity podcast, and it's not about getting everything perfect. This is about transformation, deep, personal, often uncomfortable, but absolutely worth it. You may have heard the phrase Keystone Habit before. It's not one that I made up. It comes from Charles Duhigg's book, The Power of Habit, and it refers to a habit that causes a ripple effect in your life. Keystone habits are one shift that can open the door to many others. For example, regular exercise can be a keystone habit. It not only improves physical health, but it also tends to influence what people eat, how they sleep, even how they manage time and set boundaries. It's how they take care of themselves. It's how they relate to themselves. Keystone habits are powerful because they're not isolated. If you are looking to find a keystone habit, then look at how you identify or describe yourself to someone else. I'm a smoker. I'm a non smoker. I'm a fitness nerd. I'm insert whatever identification you want here. These habits are really wrapped up in our identities. And when we can change these habits, when we learn how to take control of them, they trigger identity shifts. When someone begins to see themselves as a person who works out, or a person who reads daily, or a person who doesn't drink, or a person who's working on themselves, they begin to behave in ways that match that new identity. And that identity change is everything. You can think of this as an extension of Stephen Covey's be, do, have framework. If you're unfamiliar, the idea of be, do, have underscores the importance of focusing on the story we tell ourselves about ourselves. When we see ourselves as someone, for instance, who is successful, then we start to take the kinds of actions that match that story so that our world continues to make sense to ourselves. If I think of myself as successful, that when I take the kinds of actions a successful person would take, things are in alignment. The world makes sense to us. Conversely, if I think of myself as successful, but then I get into a funk and I'm spending all of my time sitting on the couch, I've forgotten about my goals, the story I'm telling myself and the observable world stop making sense together. And I'm much more likely to change my behavior to put myself back into that alignment with the story that I'm telling myself. Here's the kicker. What if you are someone that has a story about yourself that is negative, or a story about yourself that's moving you away from the life you want to lead? What do you do? People that think of themselves as unlucky or weak tend to be. Research bears this out. It's a tough spot to be in. This is where this podcast and my work with Affective Liminal Psychology come in. We actually have way more power over these influential stories than we appreciate. If we can figure out what these stories, which are often buried in the subconscious, if we can figure out what these stories are, then we can actually rewrite them and transform ourselves with new keystone habits. Now, I want to bring this out of kind of a theoretical idea and into something very real. I didn't start out coaching on this because I thought habits were interesting. They are interesting, but I didn't do it because I thought that it was cool. I started because I had to change my habits. And for me, it was drinking. For the better part of 2 decades, I was someone who was drinking more alcohol than I was happy with. And on the outside, I looked really successful. I looked really happy. I excelled in education and in my career. I had close relationships. I had a loving partner. Have I was winning, but on the inside, I was in turmoil. Um, for me, what had started out in college as a fun pastime with friends had developed over the years into something excessive and self isolating. My health and relationships were starting to be impacted, and I felt like I was losing my spark. I was losing my drive. I tried cutting back on my own, and that would work for a while, but inevitably, I ended up drinking more and more until I was back to where I was before. I started to get scared. It seems in our society that you're kind of presented with two options when it comes to alcohol. You get to either be a normal drinker who can have a few drinks and it's all fun and good, or you're one of the unfortunate ones with a disease or an allergy and you have to take on the stigmatic and shame laden label of alcoholic. And you have to spend the rest of your life taking it one day at a time. And I knew I wasn't in the first category because I wasn't having fun anymore. It didn't seem like something that I wanted, and it often led to me feeling terrible. And I sure as hell didn't want to be in the second category. I wanted to stop, but I also didn't want to give up the substance that seemed so integral for happiness. Our culture is really good at underscoring how important it is that you have a drink to celebrate the important events in your life and marriages and all that good stuff. It seemed intimately tied to having a good time, and I wanted to keep having a good time. So in my distress, that's when I found the third way. That's when I learned how to reshape the subconscious beliefs that were driving my behavior. I stopped trying to manage symptoms and I started reprogramming patterns at the level of internal storytelling. And when I figured out this method, I went from problematic drinking to completely alcohol free almost every night. And when I say alcohol free, I mean free. Like I don't miss it or feel like I'm missing out. I still go out and do the things that I wanted to do before. I'll go meet a friend at a bar. I just am having something else to drink and they're just having whatever they want. And it's real freedom. It's all of the fun. It's all the social connection without any of the bad impacts that alcohol was giving me. It stopped being something that I felt like I needed to fight against. And there's simply no desire. And there is no suffering in the absence of desire. So then I got really curious to figure out why this method worked. Since then, I've used the same method to completely reshape my health and wellness. I've used it to improve my relationships and find never before imagined levels of success in my professional life. So, what was this method? What did I figure out? When I work with clients, I don't just give them tips and tricks. We go deep because that's where the real change is. The method I use is rooted in affective liminal psychology, which is a way of understanding behavior change that focuses on emotional states, identity thresholds, and subconscious beliefs. Because real habit change happens in those quiet liminal spaces when you're ready to make a change in your life, but you're not sure how. When you're not sure who you are anymore, but you're starting to believe in who you could be. This process is gentle, which is different than a lot of habit change or like discipline focused methods of approaching behavior change. This process isn't about force. It's about alignment. When you stop fighting yourself and you start listening to what's really going on under the surface, that's the secret. That's when everything changes. And I've seen it happen again and again, especially with my clients who tend to be fellow millennial professionals who are used to achieving, performing, pursuing, pushing, but who've hit a wall. Whether it's old coping mechanisms that just don't serve them anymore, or falling into substance abuse or bad habits and behaviors and things like that. I help people see that they are more powerful in their lives than they know. And I give them the tools they need to take charge, identify the disempowering thoughts that are keeping them stuck, and work to rewrite those limiting scripts into new beliefs that shape the lives they want to live. So, in future episodes, I'll be diving into the science and psychology of habit formation. I'll be sharing more stories and eventually having conversations with people who've mastered the art of habit change. But today, I just want to leave you with this. One keystone habit, one small aligned change can create a shift that transforms your entire life. It starts with awareness of the stories you're telling yourself. And it grows when you believe that change is possible. And it sticks when the change becomes part of who you are. If you found something valuable in this episode, I'd love for you to follow the podcast. That's the best way to make sure you don't miss what's coming next, and it helps this show reach more people who might be right on the edge of transformation. Thanks for being here for this first step. Until next time, keep noticing, keep being curious and compassionate with yourself. And remember that you get to be the author of your own story. So make it a good one. Until next time.